Hi everyone, this is Adrian at 18 Echo SF. I decided to do a video today and show you the trigger installations that I just did over the past couple of weeks with two of my 1911s. My Kimber Pro Carry and my Colt Combat Commander. And I'll just explain the thought process and kind of what took place and why I even changed them. So the original stock Kimber trigger was this one, a three-hole drilled, curved trigger, and it was a nice trigger, but I just decided I wanted a little bit of a different look. This was, my few months ago actually, and I decided I wanted kind of a different look, to the gun. And I happened to see on the internet or on the Kimber site one of their guns. It was, I think, the custom carry, and that particular gun had this trigger, which is a solid, no holes drilled trigger. And I really loved the look of it. So I installed this trigger, and I liked it a lot, with one exception. I began noticing when I would go to the range, as I was shooting, that my trigger finger was getting sore and kind of raw up at the top of where my finger would rest on the trigger. And I've been shooting 1911s a long time, and so I'm not quite sure why this happened. Maybe it's just an old guy syndrome or something like that that caused me to move my finger a bit, on the trigger. But it must have been resting up near the top and near this edge, and it started rubbing my finger raw to the point where I began wearing a glove while I was shooting. So the more I thought about this, I thought, this could probably be corrected by going to one of the flat triggers, which I'll just show you, like that. And the reason being, of course, that on the flat trigger, it doesn't matter where your finger sits. Your finger will pull the trigger straight to the rear, no matter whether it's up, down, a millimeter or so. So I decided to replace that, and I ordered a Wilson Combat flat trigger, and that's the one that's in my Kimber Pro Carry. I happen to love the way it looks. I've been out shooting with it, and it is just awesome. It probably has a 4-pound trigger pull approximately, even though I didn't mess with the sear. But, so it could have been set that way from the factory. But it just really shot beautifully, and I love the look. And my finger, the way it sits on that trigger, and maybe you can see this way, doesn't cause any discomfort on that trigger finger. So this trigger from Wilson had an over travel screw. Now I want to show you on the stock Colt trigger, there is no over travel screw at all on this one. And on the Kimbers, of course, they do have over travel screws, but you'll notice, and I've got this upside down, so you'll notice that I have that screw screwed all the way in, and it worked perfect on my gun. This will come into play when I tell you about my Colt today, which I just installed that trigger. The over travel screws, I know they have a purpose, but when you think about this on the Colt, there is no over travel screw. So maybe the Kimber has tighter tolerances or something that maybe the Kimber I'm speaking of, and maybe needs the over travel screw to really take up the adjustment. But for me, I just screwed it all the way in, installed the trigger, and it came out, perfect. Now, when I took this trigger out of the Colt, at the time I installed the stock Kimber trigger, and it worked really well, really good as well. Now the over travel screw was out a little tiny bit. I had adjusted it. So I didn't have it screwed all the way in, even though I could have, So just, 2 weeks ago, week and a half, about 2 weeks ago, I installed that Wilson Combat flat trigger. Now this trigger did require some fitting on the top and the bottom. In other words, it wouldn't slide into the frame. It wouldn't clear the opening. So I had to file down the top and the bottom. And it required a bit of filing to get it to work. But I got it to work perfect. So minor fitting is what they say, of course, and it worked good. But interestingly enough, the reason I picked the Wilson trigger originally over a 10-8 performance trigger, which is what 10-8 really is known for and how they made their name with their triggers. Everything that I read about the 10-8 performance trigger said it really required a lot of fitting. Well, I'm going to tell you that it was the complete opposite on the installation on my Colt, because the Wilson Combat trigger, nice as it is, and I do love it, on the Kimber required much more fitting than the new 10-8 performance trigger that I have on my Colt. Now, if you can see on the Wilson Combat one, hopefully you can see the hole to adjust the over travel screw in there, and in the 10-8 performance, you'll notice, hopefully you can see this, there is none. Now the reason they don't have an over travel adjustment is the only way you can adjust the over travel screw on the 10-8 performance, you have to file it off. So the first thing I did today when I broke the gun down and put the new trigger in, the new 10-8 performance trigger, I put it all back together and tried it. It wouldn't, and the sear would not release. So I knew I was going to have to do some adjustment. So I took the gun back apart, took the trigger out, and I started thinking about that over travel screw and what I went through with the fact that Colt doesn't have one, and that one of my triggers, the flat trigger from the custom carry Kimber, is screwed all the way in, and the one that I had that came out of the Pro carry that I put into the Colt as a replacement, that the over travel screw is just extended a very, very small amount. So I decided that instead of filing down that 10-8 performance screw, that I was just going to remove it. Now, it was put in with red Loctite, but it didn't take much to get it out. As a matter of fact, this may be the best way to show you. Here's the screw right here. Hopefully you can see it. And I just removed it completely, cleaned the hole out, got all the red Loctite remnants out of there, and then reinstalled the trigger with no over travel adjustment at all, and it works perfect, as you can see. And the reset on it is also very short. So, and kind of like the Kimber, you'll see, it's still, I shouldn't have held it. And the reset on this is about the same. So I love the look of these flat triggers. I just think it adds, something. I don't know what. And it's just different, I guess. But from a functional standpoint, I love the fact that my finger now sits, it's easier probably to turn it this way. My finger just sits completely flush no matter where it is on the trigger. And so that will prevent any dinging of, my finger. So both triggers, I can't really recommend one over the other. They're both fabulous. They were close to the same price. The Kimber was, the Wilson Combat trigger was a little bit more, a few dollars, not much, than the 10-8 Performance. But I actually liked both of them. What I really like about the 10-8 Performance one, though, however, is there's no over travel adjustment screw hole in the front of the trigger to take away from the look, and that I really, really like. So if you have any questions or any comments, you hate them, you like them, whatever. You hate 1911s, whatever. You know, there's a lot of comments and a lot of opinions on the internet about different guns. I happen to like all guns, so but I prefer 1911, something I've been shooting for many, many years, as you can tell by my gray hair, white hair now. And I just love the gun itself. It's, you know, for young people today, they would say, well, it's really an old school gun and it's behind the times and it's not modern. And that may be true, but, you know, it's, what, 102, 103 years old now. And this thing is still around, still being manufactured by quite a large number of manufacturers. And I don't think they're ever going to quit. So if you like the platform of the gun, you might want to take a look at it. Now, just one comment. You know, I've heard people say, well, I wouldn't rely on a 1911 to protect myself. And to any of those folks that say that, I would say you are people that have probably not ever used a 1911 or never used one much because, as I said, I've had lots of different guns, some of the new modern polymer guns as well. But my 1911s, they work perfectly. They never let me down. I never have major faults with them. I hardly even have any minor faults, to tell you the truth. In the beginning, not with the Colt, but with my Kimber, I had a little bit of an ejection problem. The extractor wasn't tuned properly, but I took care of all that, and once that was all fixed, it went perfect. And I've never subscribed to the thoughts that, well, you got to break your gun in, you know, you got to shoot 300, 400 rounds, whatever. I figure if you buy a brand new gun and it's made in a really good manufacturing facility, which both Colt and Kimbers are, you shouldn't have to go, you know, shoot 500 rounds to break it in. The damn thing ought to shoot well, just with a couple of magazines out of the way, you know. The only issue with the 1911 is the feeding of hollow points, and that's something I am experimenting with right now. I just bought some Corbon Powerball, Glazer Powerball ammo, and I fired it through the Kimber. It worked perfect, and I may wind up using that as my my everyday loaded carry type rounds, 185 grain, you know, 45 caliber. So anyway, those are my opinions, and I just wanted to show you the work that I've done. And again, if you have any questions, any comments, feel free to leave them down below. Stay well and safe out there, folks.